yes, yes. Did you see the shoes? We got 3 competition right now. Shonda looking fly in those heels. I don't even know how she can walk, but all right. Some color. Our girl Susan doing some fly action there with the shoes. I tell ya, I love this community. It's amazing. You never know what's going to happen. Never know. So we are going to be talking about the 3 faces of God today. And I want you to think back to the time when you first heard about prayer. You learned about prayer. Have that vision in your mind. I'm going to share mine with you. Maybe it'll sound a little similar. About 4 years old, Mom and Gran kneel by the side of the bed, put your elbows on the mattress, put your prayer hands together. Can't do that, that's not reverent enough. Gotta be like this, right? Close your eyes and then recite the prayer. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. I'm hearing some echoes out there, so I'm thinking we had similar experiences. But I can tell you, my thought after I said this prayer was, I don't want to die in my sleep. Right? I don't want to die in my sleep. But somehow this brought comfort to my mom and Gran, like something happened, then okay. So every night I would fight sleep for all that it was worth, right? Because I did not want this mercurial God to take, what kind of God takes a kid's soul, right? So I was fighting that every chance that I got. For most of us, the second prayer that we learn is the Lord's Prayer, right? Once again, we learn it through recitation. That's how we get. And, it's so easy to think, oh, those were the good old days. It was so simple. Prayer was easy then. But what if we never questioned our beliefs around prayer? Would we still be lying in bed, fearful of dying? Right? Or would we come to believe that in the age of quantum physics, prayer is not really necessary any longer? Or maybe we would still be praying to some bearded guy on the throne in heaven to save us. Or maybe, like so many people today, you think prayer doesn't work because of all the injustices and negativity that you see in the world. So, I thought it would be really important for us to have that conversation around prayer. I believe transformation happens when we are able to stand in the question, even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it's uncomfortable. And my friends, that's growth. That's growth. So if you come here and you're like, yeah, we want to grow, but don't change anything because I don't want to be uncomfortable, right? Oh, are you thinking of doing that because that's going to not make me feel comfortable? We may want to kind of go within again and assess what we think change means and what evolution of consciousness means. But that's another talk. So let me come back here. Many of us in Unity, we are known as refugees. And what that means is that we come from another faith construct and we find unity. And usually it's the seekers, those who are challenging spiritual concepts, spiritual dogma, and they come and they find unity. What's really kind of cool is that there are now like a couple of generations of people that are like born and bred in unity, and I just get excited when I hear that, They don't have to do all the unlearning that I had to do coming in. But I remember coming in, and in case you didn't know, I came in New York City, Avery Fisher Hall, Eric Butterworth, and his wife, Olga. And I came in, and I heard prayer for the first time, and it was like, it blew me away. It was a prayer that felt like the breath of God was breathing me. It felt sacred, it felt holy. A sense of peace just washed over me. Now, the type of prayer that we use here is called affirmative prayer. And I know that you all know about affirmative prayer, but I wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page, so I went out to the home ship, unity.org, to find out their definition of affirmative prayer. And they say this: rather than begging or beseeching God, this method involves connecting with the Spirit of God within and asserting positive beliefs about the desired outcome. Affirmative prayer is the same method of prayer Jesus taught when he said in Mark chapter 11, verse 24, "So I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours." Now keep in mind, this is not about the law of attraction. Yes, we do use it for the law of attraction, but this, most importantly, is about claiming our power as divine human beings. That's what that's for. So you know me, if I'm going to use a sacred text, I need to deconstruct it for you, give you an understanding of why would they use that particular verse when they're talking about affirmative prayer. So we're going to do it in 3 layers. The first layer is looking at it within the story, like what story was going on that verse was happening. So this was the parable of the fig tree. And Jesus had just spent time with the Jewish priests, known as the Pharisees, right? They were grilling him. It was like a license and ordination for those of you who are ministerial students. You know what I'm talking about. But all of the Q&As about who are you, who do you say you are, right? He was having that kind of conversation, and he was leaving there, and he was tired, he was hungry, he was a little frustrated, and he sees the fig tree, and it's looking lush, and he's like, all right, we'll stop here for a nosh, have a little fig, and then continue on our way. So he gets to the fig tree. There are no fruits on the fig tree. No fruits on the fig tree. And Jesus curses the tree because it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for the Pharisees. The fig tree represented the Pharisees who looked so good in their holy garments on the outside, right? They were supposed to be the men of God, but inside, they were hypocrites. They were corrupt. And they brought such a burden to the Jewish people. And so he looks and he goes, once again, this is not bearing fruit, like the Pharisees were not bearing spiritual fruits. Do you see the connection there? Give me a yes, give me a nod, something. Yes. Thank you. And then the next day, they're going back to the city, and one of the disciples points out the withered tree. And that's when Jesus says, so I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. So now that's the first layer of exploration of that verse. The second one is looking through the lens of an exegesis. Now, an exegesis is basically a critical explanation of biblical text done by theologians. So it's a fancy word, meaning theologians have diagnosed or dissected the text. And you can often find those kinds of critique in commentaries. And the one that I happen to like is Matthew Henry, because it's just simple. And his interpretation of this verse is, through the strength and power of the indwelling Christ, the greatest difficulty shall be gotten over. The thing that is in our way will be affected. All right, drilling down another layer, because we are metaphysicians, right? So we need to look at what does that mean. So who do I go to? I go to our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, and I look in the revealing word. What does he say about prayer? 3 things. The highest form of accelerated mind action. 2, communing with God. 3, affirming of truth that exists eternally. My friends, what he's talking about right there in that snapshot is the 3 faces of God. All right? The 3 faces of God. This is really a powerful concept, because when we look at affirmative prayer, we know that when we pray affirmatively, it reflects the certainty that we are being led to our highest good despite temporary appearances. Despite temporary appearances. And so, as I mentioned, I started at Avery Fisher Hall with Eric Butterworth, and this was the late 80s. And after a while, I started questioning, is that all there is to prayer? Is affirmative prayer really all there is? Well, what about those times that I cannot articulate affirmative prayer? What about those times that I'm down on my knees sobbing and I can't do an affirmative prayer? What then? Well, you know, when I got to seminary, I was already questioning prayer. And in my first year of class with one of my favorite professors, Robert Brummett, he was teaching a class on affirmative prayer and just prayer in general. And he wanted each student to say an affirmative prayer out loud in front of all the other seminary students, and I freaked. I freaked. And I freaked because I thought I was going to get it wrong, and this is after 25 years, my friends, of me doing affirmative prayer. But I was so afraid that I would get it wrong. But what that let me know is that there was something deeper going on inside. You see, I was feeling like something was missing from my relationship with God. Something was missing. God had become an intellectual connection. I was missing the heart. I was missing feeling love. I was missing that mystical expression of God. And then, in that class, I learned about the three faces of God, and I went, oh, thank you. This makes sense to me now. And I really sank into a renewed relationship with Spirit. So the three faces of God really is about how we see God, how we approach God is the experience that we have of God. Do you hear that? So if my experience of God is white beard, on the throne, kind of like Santa with the naughty and nice list, right? And he's sitting in judgment, and I know there's no way for me to make that perfection list. There's no way. I mean, it's just a matter of time that he's going to strike me down and go into the pits of hell. That's what I used to believe, right? And then I would avoid that concept of God. Who'd want to talk to that? Maybe you do, but I didn't, right? And so it really is about looking at how we define God. And the three faces of God was really a game changer for me. So the first face of God is called God within. It's the I am, it's the Christ consciousness. And we usually access this through meditation and going into the silence. The second face of God is God as thou or you. And this is where you get a personal relationship with God. And you access this through prayer, chanting, gazing at another, seeing the divine in them. It's devotional. And then the third face is God as allness. And we usually are able to access this in contemplation, and when we're out in nature, we see God, the awe of God through all our senses. Now, most religions identify with one aspect of God. But what happens is we get out of balance when we only see God from one perspective. So if I were to ask you, what perspective, what aspect of God do you think Unity Church looks at God as or labels God as? What would you say? Yes, the first face. The first face. Yes, because we're embracing the I am in that first face. And I have to tell you, when I realized that God is here. It was an amazing awakening for me to realize that I am God expressing, and God sees itself through me, realizing that I can co-create the world around me. That's powerful. That's powerful to understand that there is no separation then between me and God, between you and God. And the knowing that this is holy and eternal, that it transcends space and time, it's powerful. And we sink into the knowing of this through meditation, and we outwardly express it through affirmative prayer. But what happens if that is the only way that you express your knowing of God? It becomes one-dimensional. It becomes very egoic. I got all the answers here, baby. All here. Nothing else to see here, nothing else to talk to, nothing else to learn, nothing else to grow in. It's all here. You've never heard anyone like that in Unity or New Thought communities. No. So for me, it was a powerful awakening, and yet there's more. There's more. And I realized when I got out in nature, I got this sense of God that was just so powerful, right? Seeing the sunsets, the stars, the ocean, the lakes, the trees, all the little sentient animals running around. And it's like, what else could that be? God, right? And it's this beautiful knowing, and there's this connection to this magnificence of God. And you realize then that how limited my own vision can be in compared to something that's greater. A God of omnipotence, a God of omniscience means that my life could be filled with more possibilities than I could possibly imagine on this realm. So the first face of God, powerful, realizing the I am, that's how I got into seminary, really on that, knowing. And then the third face of God allowed me to hear, see, feel guidance from God. And in its awakening to that allness, I realized that there are aspects of God that I can just allow to guide me, to bless me. And from that perspective, that's how I shepherded my first community, really accessing that third face of God. And I heard the wisdom that said, okay, so you're complete here with this community. It's time to go. And I'm like, well, not really. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. Well, but I kept hearing it. It's time to move. And of course, in my humanity, I was like, okay, in 3 months, I'll know what I'm doing next. Nope. Try again. But that was really a powerful time for me, because it meant that now I'm communicating with my beloved. I'm having these conversations. Brummett says this: the second face of God offers a very intimate perspective. We may be reluctant to use the second face lest it be seen as putting God up in the sky, but that's not necessarily so. Think of how we relate to a parent, a sibling, a partner, a lover. It's the quality of relating to God with the heart, which can be missing in the first and third face of God. And in unity in general, we tend to shy away from that, do we not? Yeah, well, a lot of us, we've been conditioned to think that if we are having a conversation with a God, then we are creating an anthropomorphic God of somebody on a throne, somebody far away from us. But I see the second face of God is where we come to on our spiritual journey when we understand that God is not one thing, but all things. God is all things. And sometimes we get so caught up on our labels, our definitions, right? That we forget God cannot be defined by our own human understanding. How could it? God is of all realms. So the second face of God is where we get those mystical and soul-shifting experiences. It's the ability to see God in each other, realizing that there's no separation. It's to be in devotion in relation to God. And in this aspect of God, we get to have those conversations. We get to be vulnerable. We get to have our hearts open and have our empty spaces filled with divine love. Not only do we get to experience the divine as beloved, but we get to become the beloved. That's a powerful, powerful relationship. To know infinity, I am beloved to infinity. You are beloved to infinity. Powerful. Now, you may experience some of the second face of God here when you come and listen to music, to gospel music, right? Because it is in that relational type of God that we are dealing and expressing. That's where that comes up. And I know some of you are like, yeah, but they're doing that outside God thing. That's okay. It's okay. It's our definition that God can only be one thing that gets us tripped up. Because when you hear that music, tell me you're not opening. Tell me you're not bopping. Tell me you're not, right? We need all of it. And I love this face of God because this is where I get to cry. If my heart needs to cry, I cry. If I need to yell and go, what the? I do that too, right? I didn't finish it. This is where I get to ask all the questions that I need to, right? And this is also where I experience huge transformational shifts. You know, the kind of shifts that you have when you're questioning, why am I here? What's my purpose? What is mine to do? Dude, you need to have a conversation to get clear on that. So 3 years ago, you know that I left my previous community, and I was on automatic, okay, we're just gonna do, I'm manifesting all this stuff. I manifest 2 communities that I could possibly be the spiritual leaders at. The answer is no. Then I'm like, okay, that's all right. I'll keep manifesting, and then I got like an opportunity to work organizationally. And again, the answer was no. And after all those no's the first year, I had to shift my focus. And as you know, Graham and I got out in nature. We were RVing around the country and just really being inspired by God. And I kept hearing, you need to write your experiences. Like, what are your spiritual lessons that you're learning on the road? Okay. I would like to tell you I'm graceful in my shifts, but I'm not. So I start writing, and maybe I'm a week in and I get an email from a colleague that says, hey, would you like to write an article for our magazine about your spiritual journey while you're RVing? And we'll pay you for it. I was like, what? No, couldn't have seen that. So this was, I think, November 2019 in our Unity magazines, right? Revving down the road was the article, right? Wow, this is happening in my conversations with the divine. Now, that conversation happened in February 2019. The article didn't come out till November, so now I'm like, right? I'm thinking, oh, here's the avenue. No, that's not the avenue. So I continue having those conversations, right, in which I'm looking at my confusion, my fears, my uncertainties. What am I supposed to be doing? Shouldn't I be a pulpit minister next? I mean, I think that's what my purpose is. And I'm even afraid to own up to the fact that I really don't want to be a pulpit minister right now. Right? Because then I have to look at, did I get it wrong? What about all those years of sweat, tears, money that I spent at seminary? I felt really lost and unsure, and it was an amazing time of my own exploration and trying new things. Those two communities, both those ministers that were hired were there 1 year and 2 years because they became the unintentional interim ministers. That could have been me, 1 year or 2 year, loving a community, and then it's time to go. So God's got me if I get out of the way. And then as I kept going, I heard, you've got a book to write, you have a book to write. And I'm like, I don't have a book to write, I don't have a book to write. But I wrote a book. Right? And it's turning your why into why not, and it's on Amazon shelves, and it's getting some really good vibes on that. And I promised Samantha that I would give her a book, so if you would. And then from there, I'm like, oh, COVID hits. So now my I'm gonna be this author, I'm gonna be on tour, blah. COVID hits. All right, well. But once again, listening to Spirit, doing that work, I realized I need to get the message out. So I become a podcaster. I need to be able to spread the message further afield. I do transition ministry work. I go into different communities doing transition ministry. And now here I am with you as a pulpit minister. Right? Doing the same function, but transformed. Hear that. And that's why we talk about transcend and include, right? That you're pulling what you've known before, but it's going to look different as you step out anew. Transcend and include. So here's my hope for you. I'm going to finish this talk. I know I've been going for a while. I get passionate about it. I want you to give yourself permission to look at your relationship with God and to look at your relationship with prayer. Imagine if folks only saw you one way: mother, teacher, husband, father, musician, singer, minister. And that was the only way that you could interact with them. Wouldn't you feel like you're in a box, forced in a box? So imagine if we are multifaceted and multidimensional, what could God be like? And that's the gift that I want you to give yourself. Take God out of the box, people. Take him out, take it out, take her out, take him out, take it out. So we know that God is probably multifaceted, way more than 3 faces. But in our humanity, 3 faces is a really great way to start, is it not? It gives you a framework that's accessible. So I hope that you would just kind of loosen up a little bit with your understanding of God and prayer, and allow Spirit to be with you and as you. Thank you. So I invite you to take that nice deep breath in and exhale. And as you exhale, allow your spine to straighten up so that your energy can flow. Put your feet firmly on Mother Earth and flow that energy into her, renewing Mother Earth, blessing her as she grounds you. Another deep breath in and exhale, releasing All of the concerns before you got here, just release them all. And bring your energy, your consciousness, your light, your love to this now moment to be nurtured by the divine, by the holy. As you say yes to expanding in awareness of the divine, expanding in your definition of God, expanding beyond human thought, beyond human knowing, and allow God in. Allow God in new and profound ways, to love you, to cherish you. To see you increase. To support you in the knowing of who you are, whose you are, and what is yours to do. Breathe into that. And follow your breath. And breathe. And I want you to sit in the silence for a moment and feel the beloved. And let the baby say amen. And so we breathe. And we notice maybe there's some extra bubbling energy inside. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's love. Love of allness. Take another deep breath in and exhale. Feel the chair supporting you. You may flutter your eyes open. Maybe stretch a little bit. Be here now, renewed. Namaste.